Bad prose, what you gonna do when the prose police are coming for you? Bad prose, bad prose. Alrighty, so, John, you may remember I asked if there was any specific section you were thinking about doing.
Yes. You know what? I would go ahead and just take it from the top.
Take it from the top?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so be it. Let's get into it then. Do-do-do, do-do-do. Alrighty, so here we see a standard copyright page. No part of this publication may be reproduced. Very standard, good stuff. Stored or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, copy, photocopy, recording, scanning, or otherwise without written permission from the publisher. Yep, makes sense. Good to go.
How's my prose on that?
That was solid legal prose, and I think that about does it for the segment tonight. Bad prose. Okay. I keyed. Okay. Alrighty.
Or we could do the content section. I'm just kidding.
All right, so A Blind Date with the Shadow Man, Chapter 1 of The Last Angel Warrior. And just so anyone watching tonight knows, you can find John reading his entire first chapter here on the channel. We posted that earlier in the week. It's a pretty good reading. So check that out if you want to hear more of the book after this. And that's going to be up in perpetuity, not coming down or anything.
Yeah.
The first time I saw him was on the last day of summer at the Georgia Peach Diner, where I worked. It was a relatively slow shift, mostly moms dragging their kids off to the mall for last-minute back-to-school shopping. I was putting in yet another order for a hamburger with ketchup when my best friend, Tristan, beelined towards me, bumping into tables and knocking over condiments as he ran. "Caleb, that's him," he said, his mouth to my ear as his hand clasped to my shoulder. "That's the man who moved into the old Vic this summer." Tristan's red hair and pale face matched the red and white uniform we were forced to wear at work. All right, we'll stop there and begin. So, any thoughts, Caitlin?
Well, I was going to say what I was thinking when I first started reading it. I felt like it immediately established the strength of the character voice, because this being written in first person, that's very important to do. And it definitely came across like a 15 or 16-year-old boy who was maybe a little bit more mature than most. So I could definitely kind of get that he had a handle on his thoughts. And
right, that is something I can't really get it from just that segment, but I will say that as you read the book in its entirety, you definitely get the feeling that it's being written in voice and that we're being told this story by a competent, articulate teenager, which I think is one of the most important things to do when you're writing first person, is to make your narrator intelligent and articulate, because no one wants to listen to a slack-jawed idiot tell a story.
Right.
YA fiction, it sounds like the average teen is telling it to you, and that's why it sucks.
Yeah.
So this is a marked improvement over that, I do agree, because even though the language is definitely, high school, it's still not inarticulate.
Yeah.
It's properly punctuated. There's a good grasp of syntax and flow. The pacing of the sentences is good. And again, there is just enough of a taste of voice that, just from what I've read so far, I get the idea that I want to keep reading because I'm going to keep getting more character voice. And I gotta say that I think as far as YA fiction goes, the first line, the hook line is pretty good. The first time I saw him was on the last day of summer at the Georgia Peach Diner where I worked. So because this is written in past tense, and we hear that the first time I saw him, that immediately sets us up with a question, which is very good
Mhm.
standard practice. And then we get at the end of the sentence where I worked. So now we have another question. So who is this guy that this is the first time he's seen him? And why is it where I worked? What happens to his job? So that's
Yeah.
two questions in the first sentence. And because again, the rest of the paragraph after that is articulate and well structured, we don't lose interest. So
Mhm.
solid.
Plus, I like the fact that with that first line, it automatically establishes the entire aesthetic and setting of what
Yeah,
we're looking at
really
and
not
where
even
we
the first
are.
line, just the words Georgia Peach Diner. You instantly get an idea.
And that, that you mentioned, it's summer.
Oh yeah,
So
you're right.
you
The last day of summer.
automatically get,
You're right.
hey,
You're right.
this is where we are. This is the kind of lighting and everything that we're seeing right now.
Now, and moving down, I like I like that in such a short period of time. So to do
Oh.
and really quick, here's a good example of how to fit characterization into very short quips. So I was putting in yet another order for a hamburger with ketchup. So that's a sign. That's just the barest hint of character frustration, and
Mhm.
and the character being like, "What the fuck is wrong with these kids?" kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like a little bit
Right.
of personality. That's just an example of the subtle things you can do in your prose to establish character voice. But moving on to what I was going to say about
Mhm.
Tristan. Tristan beelined toward me, bumping into tables and knocking over condiments as he ran. So we get that Tristan person isn't graceful, isn't careful, and then Caleb, that's him. Um, you know, all conspiratorial up close to his friend. That's the man who moved into the old Vic this summer. So we get the idea that this guy is a clumsy teenage boy who likes
Mhm.
to gossip, and he's kind of one of these shifty conspiratorial types. All in, this has got to be like roughly 20 words.
Yeah.
So that's really good, compact characterization. So that's good. All right, we'll move on.
Mhm.
The man was sitting 3 booths back on the other side of the diner, my section. It was rare for someone new to come here unnoticed. Haynesville wasn't a particularly large place. The only wait. Okay, so here's one place where here's a place where we can do a minor critique. This whole sentence right here, it was rare for someone new to come here oh, excuse me. There's a period right there. I'm blind. My bad.
Yeah.
Never mind. I rescind what I was going to say.
It's okay.
I
It's
missed
all
that
right.
period.
It's coming though. It's coming.
Okay. The only new people that turned up were usually here to visit Raven Tech Labs, the large prosthetics company at the edge of town. Whenever someone new moved in, people talked. So we get the idea that this is kind of the quintessential small town feel, and that does a lot of world building and setup all by itself. Now, I will say, because we don't have a specific time period,
Mhm.
so you assume that this is probably like established in like a current town, but reading throughout the book, you're not really 100% sure of that because there's no like really hard evidence of what time period this is in. And I would have liked to have seen some indication of that in the initial pages.
Mhm.
And right here, um, where he's talking about the people showing up in town and visiting Raven Tech and everything, that would have been a good place to potentially maybe fit in something about what time period we're in, if we wanted to absolutely set the time period. Sometimes authors deliberately make the choice to leave the time period ambiguous. And if that's being done deliberately, John, you can answer that.
You want me to answer now, or you want me to wait till the end?
Whichever one you want, sir.
Yeah, it was deliberate for me
Okay.
to leave out the time period. I didn't want to. Well, yeah, I'll talk later about why it was deliberate and all that stuff. But yeah, it was a deliberate choice for me to
Okay.
leave out the time period.
Okay. I'm interested in hearing the rationale.
Yes.
Okay, so Tristan took gossiping about newcomers to a whole new level. He was a Class A nutcase. I like that set. It's a short, snappy sentence, and it's just colorful enough to where we get some more character flavor. So I like that. There's a whiff of humor there, so that's good. He always babbled on about conspiracy theories and our imminent doom. The week before, he'd convinced himself the government was tracking everyone through their smartphones. The week before that, it was something about TV and auto suggestions brainwashing us to think what they wanted us to think, which is actually true. This was just the latest in a long list of conspiracies. Apparently, the man looked at Tristan funny on the street earlier that day as he'd walked into work. Now, he'd be convinced the man was following him. So, other than there being a double space right here, I don't have anything in particular to say about this. This is all, it flows good. It's fairly succinct. There's good character voice. No notes in particular on that section. Caitlin?
And it packs a lot of information into a very short space without making us feel like we're getting info dumped on. So
Yeah.
Kudos, because a lot of people, first book, they can't do that. So
Thank you for that. I couldn't even follow because my eyes was staring at that glaring double space right there.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout the book, and don't feel I'm not going to give you any shit because I've released and sent out, like, I have multiple copies of my book printed right now.
Mhm.
I have a box of like 5 over there that I ordered before I found out that my file on Barnes and Nobles was fucked up.
Mhm.
And they're packed full of typos because it's not the final edit of the book that I printed.
Of course.
Yup.
But I suck at clerical matters is the point I'm making here.
Oh, man.
I'm telling you, Caleb, there's something weird about that guy, Tristan said, followed by a quick and painless jab from his elbow. Quit staring, he'll see you. Relax, I sighed, rolling my eyes and reaching for the next order. I've got to give the guy his pie. I was running a little late that day, and someone else had already given the man his coffee. I grabbed a slice of pie from the counter and pushed past my friend, humored by his overreaction. Again, we're getting great characterization. We're fitting a lot of interaction and so this is an important technique comment here.
Mhm.
This is something that a lot of authors miss. In this dialogue here, we get an action and a little bit of information about the action. And then, right here, humored by his overreaction, we get a little bit of internal status, internal dialogue, thought, whatever word you want to describe it. It's what's going on in the head of the narrator.
Mhm.
Fitting in these little things like humored by his overreaction and getting the descriptions of what's going on in between sections of dialogue, that lets us know what the narrator notices and pays attention to and what they're feeling and thinking. That's how you build really solid, well-rounded character voice, narrator voice in very short periods of time. And it's being consistently done here, at least in what we've seen so far. But I can tell you, having read the whole thing, it's pretty consistent.
Yeah. There was not any strain in the first person character narration.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Up until that point, the day had gone as normally as any. The diner was dotted with the same faces, having the same conversations. We could have maybe had a comma right there at faces to break up that idea. But it's not wrong as it is, but I don't know. For some reason, I just feel like I would put a comma in there. Damien Daslick was slumped over his grilled cheese sandwich at the end of the bar, with his headphones pushed firmly in his ears, and the look of "Don't bother me" practically written on his face. Now, this section here about Damien Daslick is good, and it gives me just enough information to where I might be able to recall the character later. And the "don't bother me" thing is just spicy enough to where basically, this is just enough information to make me aware that this character is going to be important later.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying here.
Plus the whole like mentioning that his earbuds were firmly pushed into his ears. You get the idea that he's one of those guys that's just like, I'm just gonna shove these all the way in there because no one in the world but me exists.
I'm glad that you. I'm glad that you like that. I
Yeah.
wanted to comment on your comma comment earlier.
Yes.
My editor told me your commas are like cockroaches.
Oh.
Yeah, I had a similar what's the word I'm looking for here?
Discussion.
Not discussion, a similar sentiment from my editor.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, "Jack, you use twice as many commas as you need." I was like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm not how I speak.
You're like,
A lot of dramatic pauses. I took one right there."
Commas.
Like, no.
Commas, and then there's this weird thing, and I don't know where it comes from.
Mhm.
We've decided that my finger is accidentally pushing it, but question marks. Commas and question marks. They appear, and he'll erase the question mark. He'll erase the question mark, and he'll say, "Did you mean to put a question mark there?" It's like, I didn't know it was even there.
That sounds like an issue of your typist habits. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, I hate to break it to you live, but you missed one when you were edited. There's a sentence that's clearly supposed to end with a period, and it's a question mark.
I have found a few while reading.
I only found one.
Good. I'm glad.
Alrighty. Sarah Withers from school beckoned one of my coworkers to her table with her newly remodeled prosthetic arm, courtesy of Raventech. Mr. and Mrs. Abernathy sat at a booth in the back corner by the window, looking out and bickering about the weather as usual. Mr. Jones, the CEO of Raventech, sat opposite the Abernathys with his daughter, Kalia?
Kalia.
Kalia, okay. With his daughter, Kalia. Moving on. on their weekly outing. And then there was the stranger. I suddenly realized he'd had his eyes glued on me as I made my way across the diner. "Your pie, sir," I said, presenting the plate. That's when things got weird. "Thank you, Khalib." Oh my God. See, and now I do an accent and I fuck myself up. "Thank you, Khalib," he replied as the edges of his lips curled. His smile was forced and unnatural. I looked down at my chest to see if I was wearing a name tag. I wasn't. "How'd you know my name?" "You're Mayor Donovan's kid," he feigned nonchalance as he pried the plate from my hands. I've seen you in pictures. You don't move into a new town without doing your research. He picked up his fork, cutting into the flaky crust of the peach pie. Caitlin, any thoughts?
I really like, and I know this is kind of a minor detail, but minor details are my jam. So, the paragraph where you were talking about Sarah Withers, I liked how you established basically what kind of a place Raven Tech was by using that, because having mentioned Raven Tech Labs previously, it planted a question of, okay, well, obviously this is going to be important later, so what specifically do they do? So I thought that was a very good minor detail to add in.
Thank you.
And something else that merits mention about this short paragraph right here. We see the line, courtesy of Raven Tech. That's the end of the paragraph. And that leaves us with a very slight flavor of corporate benevolence, which is wonderful misdirection for later in the story.
Yes.
So that's a very solid place there. And then there was a stranger. And that's a beautiful point to make is we establish misdirection that sets up a plot twist later in the story in 2 words and a name. It's not hard, folks. Nope. Start foreshadowing. Your books will be 10 times better.
about the names Caleb and Kalia, the way that you pronounced it makes sense to me.
Caleb? Yeah.
Caleb.
Caitlin was pointing that out to me. That it was phonetic. That's how it would be.
Phonetically, it's Caleb, and it can be spelled Caleb. Now, it is spelled the way that it's spelled. It's spelled based off of just African American culture, but even African Americans don't get it right, so it's fine. But with Kalia specifically, you said Kalia, and for me, Kalia makes sense, but I've heard some gross mispronunciations of that name, and I'm like, but I don't understand how you got that from there. But Kalia makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm a Hooked on Phonics kid, and I have a fairly good understanding of a lot of etymology and a lot of how the language a word roots from changes the rules of its enunciation. But I couldn't read until I was 9, so sometimes I still fuck something up.
I was a Hooked on Phonics kid too. It's okay.
Plus, with the changing of the spelling, instead of it being standard Caleb, it changes the meaning.
That's true.
Of the name.
I love that. I would love to know. I would love to hear more about that.
Well, because Caleb, Caleb, in Hebrew means dog. And to change the spelling to Kalib, still Hebrew origin, means wholeheartedly or with one's whole heart.
Love it.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And by that sheer stroke of coincidence, the character's name spelling was changed much more to be in line with his character. Serendipitous or destiny? Alrighty. Cutting into the flaky crust of the peach pie. Oh, yeah, I muttered, ignoring the growing knot in my stomach. So here, with that addition of that line, I do want to point out too, we have a very good job of setting the uncomfortableness of this scene from beginning all the way up until where we currently are. Like the thing about the patron yanking the plate out of his hand, and the thing about him giving Caleb a strange look as he brought his food over, and then just every time there's room for, like right here, his lips curled, his smile was forced and unnatural. At every turn, the author has managed to fit in a quick line, a quick snippet of some of the surrounding details that give us a better picture of the mood and feeling of the scene. It's very well done. You're Mayor Donovan's kid. He feigned Caleb Donovan, right? The stranger spoke as if he'd just remembered my name. But even this sounded well rehearsed. The fork scraped across the plate, which gives me goosebumps. You bastard! How dare you write? Just as a side note.
Oh, it's like, but see, look, this is how we turn up tension, though. It's like, see, if you didn't think this was anxiety inducing enough, we're gonna introduce this sound that's like scraping nails on a chalkboard.
Not,
except it's worse.
It is horrible. That's a horrible sound.
Yes.
It legitimately hurts my ears.
Oh,
Which actually hurts.
Oh, man.
Andrews, actually, I corrected. I go by Caleb Andrews. Oh, the man bobbed his head up and down. That's right, you're adopted. I think I read that somewhere. Well, it's very nice to meet you, Caleb. I tried to swallow, but my mouth was too dry to allow it. So dry. To allow it. Research, he said. More like stalking. Who is this man? I mean, sure, a person would have to be blind not to know I didn't look like Donald and Susan Dullivan. Anyone with eyes could see I was adopted. I just wasn't, it wasn't just my appearance either. Aside from the contrast of my bright blue eyes, curly brown hair, and mocha-colored skin, with their straight hair and slightly pink complexion, I had simply never felt like their son. I suppose that's why I never called them mom or dad. It had never felt right. Okay, so this paragraph right here, this is relevant to the discussion we're having at the end of the show. And it's also, this paragraph, when I was reading, I had a discussion about Caitlin entirely because of this paragraph, and most specifically because of this line right here, mocha-colored skin. John, I am sure you have heard the piece of advice thrown around that you should not describe ethnic characters' skin tones by food comparisons, but you've done it here. I want to hear your thoughts on that whole issue in writing.
The funny thing is that that problem came up more recently, and once it came up, I was like, well, I've already done that. I was like, it has never really bothered me. I understand what the issue is. I understand they have made some very legitimate points. And I stand for being progressive. I stand for all that stuff. However, there are so many other things that we can build our fort on. There are so many other things that we can be fighting for. We don't need to be a social justice warrior for everything.
Right.
And I will probably people will probably get mad at me for saying that. But I don't think that's the way that I would describe his skin.
Right.
I'm sure there are other ways to do it, but I would just as quickly describe someone with peach skin or someone with milk-colored skin.
Yeah.
So the hint of strawberry on their cheeks. You know,
Mhm.
I would just as easily do that. So uh,
Right.
yeah,
And as a white person, I wouldn't have the slightest problem at all.
yeah.
And I think the entire issue of, like you said, being so hyper focused on language when there's obviously no ill intent, it's just a comparison.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And what is, and truly tell me, what is the root issue here for you? Is it that I'm comparing a person to food? Because generally speaking, humans are really big fans of food, so I'm not really understanding the issue here.
That's honestly
Like,
probably why I'm fighting for it so much because I love food. But don't get me wrong. I understand the issue. I understand that African Americans have been objectified
Mhm.
well,
for
I understand that there's something to discuss there
yeah.
with the objectification, but I would argue that you find that much more so in other places that the author might write about the character.
Mhm.
Like say if it's a horror author and
Hmm.
every book they write, they have a token black guy who dies right away.
Hmm.
It's pretty obvious to me that person sees race as a token
Yeah,
issue.
which is going away. But if we even move over to
Thank
romance,
God.
we even move over to
Mhm.
romance, there is definitely an idea of what an African American male is supposed to look like and
Right.
be like and act like, and there's a and what a African American woman is supposed to be like, act like, and look like. There's definitely a fetish. Oh my god, fetishization.
Fetishize. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Fetishization and when it's not a fetishization, there's a easy stereotype of the
Yes,
inner city
Mhm.
black guy that's used a
yes,
lot. Yeah,
absolutely.
I would agree with all of those things, and it's no secret to anyone who pays attention to my content. I'm not an SJW. I'm
Hmm.
no I am right of center firmly, but even I can admit that that is a problem that exists in literature and in storytelling in general.
Mhm.
But
And
again,
hey,
all of those are more important issues than his skin was the color of mocha.
yeah. And hey, I mean, for those, I mean, I'm fairly new author. People don't know me too well. I
Mhm.
am. I do stand. I mean, lean towards the
Exactly.
social justice warrior side. However, um, what we lack in 2022 is balance.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
I agree with that
So,
100%.
and that's one of the things that I hope we get back to.
Yeah.
Right. And you know what? That starts with being allowed to say what you want to say
I agree
and
with
being
that.
allowed to joke about things.
I agree
That's
with
why
that.
free speech is so damn important.
I agree with that 100%.
And see, this whole thing that's happening right now, folks. This is why it's so important to talk to people who you don't see eye to eye on every little thing with, because right now we're finding common ground, and I'm having a good time. See, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
All right, and then the other thing I noticed about this, and I made a note of this in my reader's notes, was you've made the character black, or at least partially black, but they have blue eyes, as obviously that's you as well.
Hmm.
So that, first of all, when I read that, I was like, that's an interesting choice. And then
Mhm.
I had like an itch in the back of my brain, and I was like, wait a second. And I went and looked at a picture of you again, and I was like, oh fuck. So it raises the question: did you just want to make a unique appearing black protagonist? Give him something that really set him out from being visually standard, we'll say,
Hmm.
or was it that you wanted to kind of self-insert a little bit?
Um, so, so when I heard the comments about giving black characters colored eyes, I admittedly felt bad about that one. I was like, oh, that one is true. That is, something that is a little bit more sensitive, giving Eurocentric features to African American or
Mhm.
African characters as a standard of beauty, which isn't what I was my intent. Um, However, there's two reasons why I decided to give Caleb blue eyes. The first one is the character that I did base this character off, which actually, ironically, is not me.
Okay.
Was a 16-year-old foster kid who had who kind of looked like me. He had
Okay.
color. He had the same color skin with blue eyes, very very bright blue eyes. Who kind of had an attitude, and
Mhm.
I met him, and I was like, I want to write about you.
Yeah.
So
I
and
respect that.
that's what I did. I wrote about him. The
I
second
respect that.
reason, which I won't say too much, but um, I did it when I was in the development process because um, things changed later on.
Mhm.
Um, but I did it for familial um, ties
Mhm.
as well. Um, when I was in the development station, part of this, I there were a lot of that, which not isn't there anymore, isn't existent anymore, where it's like the eyes were important
Yeah.
to where you came from. Um,
Mhm.
it's not as important anymore. It really isn't. I mean, don't go looking through the book and saying, "Oh, they have the same color eyes; they must be related." Because
Right.
I let go of that. I let go
Well,
of that.
hey, I mean, you could still have fans who, later on down the road will be like, "Oh, well, this is an Easter egg, so
Mhm.
this will be the
And
thing that we latch onto."
Yeah,
and I love fiction that takes small details like that into account and small real world facts like that and really works to incorporate them into
yeah.
the story because you're right. Eye color is a strong marker of family lineage,
Hmm.
and I want to circle back to the comment about um, blue eyes being a Eurocentric beauty standard.
Hmm.
I think that how to say this so that I don't step in mud because didn't say what I wanted to say right.
You can always backtrack. It's fine.
What am I, a politician? No, so okay. The thing about blue eyes being a Eurocentric beauty standard and therefore it shouldn't be inserted into black or other ethnic characters as a marker of physical appeal and beauty. I find that very interesting because the psychology and science behind color is that humans generally prefer more brightly colored things. And so I really don't think that that's a race issue so much as it is a behavioral science of humans thing. And that's something that I hope the community can come to terms with and get over in the long run. Because while yes, it's typically Northern Europeans who have bright eyes, that doesn't mean that they're inherently more beautiful because of that. It just means that their eyes are pretty because they're a color that humans recognize at a DNA level as being more beneficial than, say, brown. Brown is the color of dirt and shit. Blue is the color of water and some fruits. And
Hmm.
that's written into our DNA. It's no one's fault. That's just how it is. And some people really like brown eyes.
Yeah, well, so that's the thing. I think that brown eyes, the issue, and that is a true psychological thing, may have been where it started. However, because of that, there's been some things that have been perpetrated within media, starting way back in the early 20s, the 30s, the
Mhm.
40s. Well, I mean, I guess
Mhm.
when colored. Well, no. I take that back. If this is what it meant to be beautiful, and
Yeah,
all of those
I
things
understand that.
were Eurocentric things.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
those who grew up without that, even today,
Mhm.
um, had to, it took a little bit more to be convinced that they were okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I
They were
understand that
beautiful.
concern.
I had a really good conversation with my niece. My niece is 16 now. When she was about 10 or 11, she was watching TV, and and you know, one of the things with black girls is they really struggle with their hair, especially if they grew up in a predominantly white area.
I heard that from one of my black friends as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was looking at this TV. She was watching Disney Channel. She said, "Oh, I just wish I looked like her." And I paused. I turned off the TV, and I had a long conversation with her. And I said that. Well, actually, I paused it. I said, "That's not real."
Right.
I showed her that. I don't know if you remember that Dove Beauty commercial where they show you everything that they did. Yeah. I showed her that. I showed her that commercial to show her, but then I told her to look at herself.
Right.
This little girl, she's 16, but she's the most beautiful 16-year-old girl I've known. And since then, she's gotten so much into her agency and so comfortable in who she is.
Good.
It doesn't matter. Like she's never arrogant, but she's so confident. And I'm so proud that she has come from that to where she is today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that issue that was the root of that anecdote where people don't have representation in the stories they consume, and so they feel like their culture is leaving them out. Again, I'm not an SJW by any means, but that's a real phenomenon that needs to be given the proper respect.
Yes.
Because as storytellers, we have a responsibility to push forward the best ideas our culture has to offer and to tell stories that unite and bring people together. How can you do that if your story doesn't tell the stories of all the people and properly? Absolutely. It's okay if this novel doesn't have this character or this novel doesn't have this character, but across your writing, you should try to bring people together. That's what good storytellers do.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I left, working for people in trad pub, because I think it's really cool when you represent characters as having an integrated family, because I come from an integrated family. My brother Joel, he's married to a black woman, and also my brother Aaron is also married to a black woman. And I mean, basically my entire family is all colors of the rainbow.
Love it.
Pretty much. And so, and having grown up that way, we didn't really see the world as, any different than this is how things should be. So, working in trad pub with all of these people, I would, that would be the idea that I would present, and it would get shot down as, well, this could be taken negatively, so we're going to steer away from that. And so that's another reason why I came out into independent publishing, was because I was like, okay, well, what about all of these people who have, more than one kind of person in their family?
Absolutely. It's.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I don't have anything to say. I'm agreeing. I agree that it's something that's definitely important to have, and part of and the gatekeepers, those people who say well, that won't work, that will never make money, and they're shooting themselves in the foot right now, because clearly it does work, clearly it does make money. They said that a black superhero would never make box office sales. Black Panther was one of the top grossing of his time.
Black Panther was a pretty good movie, and I want my Static Shock movie. Damn it,
it's coming.
Yes.
Really?
I saw something recently, a live action Static Shock.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude!
Yes.
I loved that cartoon as a kid. He was always one of my favorite superheroes. I was like,
too.
Static Shock! Light his ass up! Love that dude. Fucking love his fucking attitude. Love his power set.
Yes.
He's just a great character. Dude, I wanted to be Spider-Man. That one was like, I was Spider-Man.
That too. When Miles Morales came out, I was super into that too as well.
Yeah, Miles Morales is a good character. I like him a lot. Okay, so to wrap up, because we're definitely going long for this segment, Just as a last note from me too, about the black character having blue eyes thing. Our friend John and the boy he based this off of aren't the only ones. It's a somewhat common phenomenon, not super, but somewhat common. I mean, the Hodge twins, they're two personalities here on YouTube, black guys with blue eyes. And there's been a lot of good. For some reason, National Geographic loves to take pictures of dark-skinned people with blue eyes. It's so many of their issues and covers have that. But yeah, that's my point. So if you want to, it's like my good friend Rush used to say: true diversity includes everyone. What about the people who are black with blue eyes? So now they have a hero. Think of it that way.
Yeah.
Very true.
Alrighty. So, absolutely. And so, yeah, man, that is Last Angel Warrior by John Wells. Like I said, I read the whole damn thing. I'm probably going to do a review over on my channel. And, yeah, it's worth checking out. The whole thing holds up to about that level. Or actually, I'd say a good chunk of it is better once he gets past the having to set everything up stage. We start going a little faster, and it's good. So anyways, yeah, go check it out. All right, everyone. This has been Prose, please. The verdict? Innocent. Maybe needs to work on punctuation just a smidge.
Well, it was just a comma.
Well, and he admits to the question mark thing later in the book.
Bad prose, what you gonna do when the Prose police are coming for you? Bad prose, bad prose.